Americans, what thing about American culture irks you the most? Ragged individualism. Life is not handed out on an equal playing field, and many people seem to believe their advantages are from their own efforts. Had a safe place to sleep growing up with plenty of food to eat. Cool, tell the kid it didn't to just snap out of their sleeping disorders and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Got college paid for in full, got a job through a family friend making ample income. Tell that to the kid eating out of food pantries just to qualify for a job that affords the ability to pay rent. It irks me to no end. How we're supposed to dedicate ourselves to our job's company. We're expected to work 40-50 hours a week and be available outside of those hours to answer emails, text calls, and go to off-site training on our days off and attend company functions and events. On top of it, the way companies want your co-workers and management to be your second family. I hate all the "we're like family here" talk. I have to be very firm about how work is work and personal life is personal life. My company is constantly trying to blur the lines and I have to say no. Car culture. Most towns and cities are built with the assumption that everyone wants to drive everywhere, to the point where it actually makes it difficult if you want to bike or walk. It makes things ugly that don't have to be, is unhealthy for people and the environment, and promotes an attitude that driving is natural and getting around on your own locomotion or outside the biggest metro areas that have subway systems taking public transportation is weird, which is really fucked when you think about it. Americans treat the politician system like a sports game. Red team versus blue team. Policies don't matter. Candidates don't matter. They don't matter because we have no alternatives. There are no other teams. Just red team and blue team. So Americans vote for their team, even against their own interests, because the other team is some degree of authoritarianism. This is why nothing meaningful is ever accomplished, and anything delivered to the American people is the bare minimum. One thing that bothers me the most is that when it comes to food in America, quantity is more important than quality. We are so dependent on fast processed food, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to find restaurants that actually put effort into their food. When I first visited Europe, the contrast in food quality was striking. I know there are great places to eat here, but in Europe it seemed like there were great places to eat everywhere. Our pride gets in the way of actually identifying problems and working towards solutions. It starts in school, where we are drilled daily that America is 100 awesome, the best in every way, and questioning it is wrong. At least that was my experience in smallest town public school in the South 90s00s. I'm sure there has been pushback in more modern times, but the discourse is still severely impacted by the brainwashing. I think it's the overall political culture of our country right now. People harbor so much disdain for those who oppose their political views that they refuse to even have any dialogue in order to find common ground, or at least attempt to understand another person's point of view. The entire country has turned into Congress. They fight so much that they never find any common ground, and therefore nothing ever gets accomplished. That social media leads everyone here in the USA to believe it's a US versus them mentality. No, it really isn't. It's just a handful of loudmouths who have a platform where everyone can hear them. Left, right, straight and gay, black, white. The reality is most people are too busy just making it by to care about any of that. I have my own opinions on things, but that's the last thing on my when I'm socializing. A country's culture is simply what people are incentivized to do. Today we incentivize victimhood and entitlement. We pander to the loudest and most offended, generally over things that shouldn't offend them, at the cost of a reasonable discourse and common sense. Our malcontents have the floor. The more attention and leeway they get, the more people find reasons to be malcontents for the same benefits. Coming from an immigrant that's a US citizen, rigid hyper-individualism that cuts people off from community and makes everyone extremely concerned with only themselves. This became the most obvious to me when some people I knew had children and were totally stranded in terms of child care. I wish we were more communal. I don't think our species would have survived if it wasn't for how social we are. I hate the drinking culture here. It's tightly tied to our capitalist system. Most breakfast brunch places serve bottomless mimosas or other breakfast cocktails, and I feel like a lot of social events are based around alcohol and binge drinking. The companies selling this stuff probably make a huge profit margin on these drinks though. Meanwhile, there are people actually struggling with alcoholism. I just hate how many Americans are incapable of going 10 seconds without hearing the sound of their own voice. Somehow I am rude for not wanting people to dump their stream of thought on me. It's never a conversation. It's just them talking at me. I really enjoy how in Nordic cultures there is even enough respect for complete strangers for this behavior to be considered rude. Rural conservative contempt for professionals and intellectuals, as well as urban liberal contempt for working class people. Conservatives scoff at doctors and engineers but depend on them for the statins and big mouth Billy bases that keep them alive. And liberals scoff at tradesmen and construction workers but depend on them to keep their precious metropolis running. 3 things. 1. Lack of care about human trafficking. It's legit just slave trading renamed to be a less cruel thing and people fall for it so easily too. The constant hate for each other and the country itself, like we run this place. If you don't like something, say something and let other be themselves long as it doesn't physically hurt someone else. 3. The parenthood crisis. Individualism taken to a pathological level. Everyone being a slave to convenience, and the ways businesses will take advantage of this to massively upcharge on any and every convenience. Also in general how everything is priced to make people spend as much as possible. Being financially responsible seems to take more vigilance than ever before. The lack of regulations on food. We put all kind of garbage into food and the only reason is capitalism. Most other countries don't allow the dyes and additives we do. Also most of the farms are now corporate owned, grow the same strains of GMO plants, and use pesticides created specifically for those plants that are destroying the ecosystem. How generally cold and antisocial people are in America. It's hard to make friends and relationships as I get older, but in reality I was just in the wrong place. Studying abroad in Europe I encountered little if any racism and people were just very easy to get to know. Any pub club I would go to I instantly became acquainted with the locals. Constant negativity about ourselves. Yeah, country isn't perfect. Yeah, we have some bad history. But all in all there's a good reason why the tired, sick, huddled masses seek our shores. Talk with a recent immigrant and you'll understand. Never stop trying to improve, but also appreciate all that this country has to offer. My tops would be: car culture, building our society and cities in a way that forces people to drive is silly. Profitability as a determining factor is what makes something and someone worthy. By extension our cult of capitalism. Lack of empathy toward people, especially homeless people. How anti-education we are. We become more focused on chasing influence and attention rather than operating on principles and values. The human compassion is gone if it means squeezing one more follower or one more nickel. I'm all about capitalism and benefiting off your labor, but there's needs to be morals on how you go about it. Almost every holiday, every tradition, every type of ideology or mindset in America is co-opted by or created for the sole purpose increasing the production and consumption of goods and services. It gets old. We no longer have any shut up, stop working, stop consuming, chill the fuck out and reflect days in America. You can't get anywhere without a motor vehicle unless you live in a city, at least one with reliable public transport and pedestrian infrastructure. Junk food is more affordable than healthier options going through the school system. There is hardly any workforce preparation but plenty of college prep. Something I heard recently that really resonated with me. Almost every high school in the US has a football team, where a majority of the skills gained are only useful to one company industry. However, far less schools have a robotics team, which garners skills for a multitude of companies' industries. The normalizing and acceptance of white nationalism. We know Fox and others exist, but if Nazi propaganda was a recognized tool of that evil, why is it currently a top channel like it's normal? And when it had to pay for one specific lie, they shrugged off $750 million. Dating in general. It's become so toxic and crazy that most PPL gave up or don't even try anymore. Seeing things like this more often. PPL not dating, higher depression and suicide rates on top of declining birth rates. It's incredibly depressing even opening a stupid dating app at this point. The worship of the flag and the need to start every school day with the pledge and sporting event with the national anthem. Other countries don't do that. It's like some cultish hive mind when I feel the need to stand for an ode to the country before doing what I left my house to do. I heard a commenter on TV say, "We don't have to worry about the Chinese or Soviets. They are just sitting back and watching while this country implodes." No other country in the world is actively teaching their citizens to hate their own country. He wasn't wrong. Obsession W work. These morons think working 60-hour weeks is something to be proud of. Being perpetual busy with no sleep being a flex. Talking about the grind lamau. We all die eventually. No one is going to remember you worked really hard for your boss. It's become so us versus them in recent years. You can hardly ever have civil discussion with anyone and it almost always devolves into argument. It's very much I don't care how my team wins or what happens when they do, I just want the other team to lose. Selective ignorance. The attacks on education by those who gain by having an ignorant populace. The rampant racism I thought we left behind in the 70s. The voice given to the Bible thumpers. The by-the-moment consumerism. No term limits. This can go on all day. Our sense of an entitlement, and the notion that the United States is the best at absolutely everything, and then everybody else in the world is just gagging to come to the United States, because we are so much better than all the other countries in the world. Ragged individualism. The I only care about myself and my family and our beliefs are the only ones that matter, fuck everybody else mentality that is glorified in this country fucking blows. Normalize caring about strangers. Also fuck capitalism. The hyper-individualism that's present and the expectations that come with it. It leads to lots of lonely people since no one is willing to open up to one another either out of fear of being hurt or because no one helped me so why should I help others? Lack of public transit outside a few large cities. Several years of living abroad, and I'm really spoiled on being able to catch a train even in a rural town of a few hundred people and get to downtown Nuremberg in less time than it would take to drive. I'd give it's just an American thing, but narcissism disguised as giving a shit is annoying and pathetic. The sending thoughts and prayers crowd. Is it at times a nice thing? Yes. Is it at times solely an attempt to put the focus on you? Absolutely. The general rudeness and sense of entitlement many people have. There's a lot of me first mentality here that manifests in a lot of different ways like on the road, in the store, etc. Just a lack of common decency and courtesy for others.